All right, you guys, as you can see by the thumbnail, I'm back with another one like the other one. Not that one, but this one. So check it out, you guys. I've been concentrating on the Mexican Mafia videos. I know it's been a while since I put out a war story. It's been a minute since I put out an Inner Demons. I'm gonna try to get them back on track. However, this video right here, I've been wanting to put it out. However, something happened today just made me, I have to put it out today because of the events that took place earlier in the day. As you guys know, I have a whole series of war stories, several episodes that I've done in the past. This is not to glorify nothing. Again, you know, this is simply to let people know what exists in this lifestyle, some of the trials and tribulations that I've been through, some of the bad choices that I made during the time when I was out there running around active. War stories is part of it. You gotta take the good with the bad with the good. However, sometimes some of the bad choices I made landed me in jail. I ended up catching a case, or there was some type of adverse effect that my poor decision making, or due to the lack of better judgment that I made, something happened. This story right here, I'm actually gonna talk about 3 separate incidents. But the first one I'm gonna talk about actually took place today. So check this out. I've always been an aggressive driver. It's just the way that I drive. I was born and raised in San Francisco. You have to know how to drive out there and move in traffic. You have some of the worst traffic out there in downtown San Francisco. Those of you from the city, those of you that have been out there in San Francisco, you know what I'm talking about. So that's just the way that, you know, I drive. However, when I was younger, I used to be a hothead. When, you know, I'd be out there on the streets driving around. I had a 1975 Chrysler. It was just a big tank. It was a big car. But that car, I used to play bumper cars with that car. I'd run into shit. I'd hit people and keep going. I mean, that's when I was really running around in the streets. I don't even think I had a license at that time. But, you know, that's how I would drive when I was younger. You know, I would always be aggressive out there. If somebody wasn't moving fast enough, I'd either get on the horn or I'd be on their bumper, or, you know, I'd speed up right next to them, roll my window down and talk shit. So that's just the way that I was as I was growing up. Now, obviously, as I got older, you know, I calmed down. Like even today, like, you know, if there's people in the car with me, it's like I look over at them and it's like, damn, what are you tripping on? You know what I mean? Like, I got this, but it's like you act like I'm gonna crash or something. Because again, it's just the way that I drive. I guess I'm an aggressive driver. I hit corners kind of fast. That's just the way that I drive. I remember, just in retrospect, you know, when I was a lot younger, I had a lot of incidents where I had road rage. I ended up getting into it with somebody because either something that they did, or like I said, they weren't moving fast enough, or they flipped me off, or they said something, and the next thing you know, we're out in the street and we're fighting. Even before I got a license, I don't think I got a license until I was about, seriously, when I got out of Pelican Bay, I was around 29 the first time I got my license. I never had a license. I was never legit. I used to drive around, never had insurance. That's just the way I was moving at that time. But, you know, going to prison and getting out, being on parole, you have to be legit. Otherwise, you'll end up getting a parole violation for driving without a license and that kind of petty stuff. So, you know, over the years, so eventually I ended up getting a license and I ended up getting insurance and all that good stuff. But I still remember getting into a lot of incidents out there on the roads with different people. And it didn't matter where I was at. I could be out there on the street. I could be getting off of an exit on the freeway. I would pull over right there, tell them, hey, roll my window down. They pull over then. And a lot of the times, you know, you had cats that would just drive off. They flip me off and drive off. But a lot of times too, I had cats that would pull over and we'd be out there fighting. So the first incident that I'm going to tell you guys about, it took place around 5 or 6 months ago. And I never talked about it because it's nothing to brag about. It's nothing to glorify. If anything, I feel embarrassed about it because, considering all the things that I've been through and where I'm at in life, I got to make better choices for myself. I got to make better decisions. And I allowed my better judgment to get away from me. So I was driving around that day. I'm not sure where I was going or what I was doing, but I remember I was coming out of a parking lot and I seen oncoming traffic coming and they were coming pretty quick. So I wanted to cut across all 3 lanes, get in the far lane, and then make a U-turn. So came out of that parking lot that I was in and I got into the far lane, and then the cars that were behind me, they were coming up pretty quick, but I guess I wasn't moving fast enough for this idiot that was behind me. So he got on his horn, he started honking his horn, and he said something under his breath. I heard him. So I opened up my door and I just kind of turned around and looked at him and I said, "Hey, what'd you say?" And he didn't say nothing, but I know I heard him say something under his breath. I heard what he said, but he wouldn't repeat it. And he just sat there looking at me, and I think that probably just pissed me off even more. So I get out of my car and I walk up to him, and he's got his window rolled down around halfway. So when I get up to his window, I tell him, "Hey, what'd you say? Repeat yourself. I heard what you said. Say it again. Now that I'm standing right here in front of you, say what you said again." And he wouldn't say nothing. So I'm standing there looking at this guy, and I'm kind of leaning into him. And he must have thought I was going to hit him or something because he was leaning away from me towards the passenger seat. And I said, "Say it again, bro. I heard what you said. Repeat yourself." Now he's not even saying nothing. It's like he's just staring out his windshield trying to think of what to say next. So I reached through the window and I socked him. And it wasn't even really, I didn't even hit the dude hard. It was more like I slapped him with the back of my knuckles. And when I did that, so as soon as I do that, he was like, "Oh, okay, you want to put your hands on me now?" So he grabs his phone and he picks his phone up off the front seat, and he takes off he's got like a back cover on it, like one of those protector covers, and he pops it off and he starts taking pictures of my license plate in my car. And I'm like, what are you gonna do with the pictures? Oh, now you're gonna call the cops on me? Now I don't want nothing to do with the dude. Now I'm thinking, man, I might have just got myself in trouble now. This dude's gonna end up calling the cops. He's got a picture on his phone of my license plate. So at that point, I'm like, I'm just gonna get up out of here. So I walk back to my car. I get in my car and I bust a U-turn. This fool follows me. He busts a U-turn and he's right behind me. So in the area that we were at, it's kind of like an industrial district. So I speed up and I try to shake this fool. Now I'm going through residential neighborhoods and he followed me for a good mile or two. But eventually I ended up shaking him. I started driving too fast. I hit a couple of corners. I went through a light and I shook him. So now I'm thinking he's probably going to call the cops. Later on, I'm going to end up getting a visit. They're going to come knocking on my door. And this fool's probably going to say that I assaulted him, that there's no witnesses. At least I didn't think there was, but that was a reality check for me. It put a lot of things in jeopardy, and it made me realize that, you know what, I can't do that no more, because there might be that one time where, well, this guy didn't call the cops and I never did get a knock on my door, but there might be that one time that it does happen. But for those of you that are like homeowners, and maybe you got a little, nest egg, you got a little bit of money put away in the bank, and you got assets, cars, boats, motorcycles, whatever you got, you have just, you're established, and you end up assaulting somebody like this and they sue you and you end up losing in court. There's a lot of things that you need to think about now, especially for those of you that are homeowners, or, that you have a little nest egg put up in the bank. You got to think about the things that you're doing out there now in the streets, and some of the choices that you make, because now there's things that you need to think about. Put yourself in a situation where you become liable for somebody else's medical bills. Now you have to start using some discretion and be smarter about the choices that you make, because if you allow something as small as a road rage incident to blow out of proportion, and you end up putting your hands on somebody, and this dude, he calls the cops on you, and whether or not the criminal charges end up sticking, this fool turns around and hits you with a lawsuit. He sues you. Now you got to think about all the liabilities. If you got money in the bank, if you got assets, if you own a home, if you have a will, all those things now you're putting in jeopardy. And if you're married, that's obviously not a good situation for your wife to be in. So, it was a reality check for me. It made me realize that I can't do that. But easier said than done, because when somebody pisses me off, when I get upset about something, a lot of the times I don't see nothing but red. I don't think about those things. I'm not thinking about the money I have in the bank or the bike I have in the garage or my truck or my cars. I'm not thinking about none of that stuff. All I'm thinking about is this fool that just disrespected me or whatever happened. A lot of the times I would react on impulse, and I would react without thinking. That's what ended up happening. And luckily nothing came of it. Like I said, I never got a knock on my door, never got nothing in the mail. It just kind of just went away over time. I was worried about it, but nothing happened. So fast forward up until today. Actually, like the last couple of days, I was thinking about dropping a war story for you guys. And it just so happened to be that the war story I was gonna drop was about a road rage incident that I'm gonna tell you guys about. Coincidentally, I end up getting into a situation today. I actually woke up this morning and said, you know what? I'm gonna go ahead and drop a video. I'm gonna put out, a war story about that incident that I had on the west side in San Jose, out in Campbell. Then this situation took place today. So let me tell you guys what happened today. So I'm just gonna say this, there's a lot of people that don't know how to drive. They just don't know how to drive. Seriously, there's a lot of times when I'm driving around that I'm on defense. So there's a lot of times when I'll be driving around that I'm not really worried about my driving. So I'm just gonna say this, there's a lot of bad drivers. I don't know how some of these cats get their licenses, but there's just there's people that just do not know how to drive. A lot of the times I'll be out there and I'm not worried about my driving. I've been driving long enough to feel confident that I'm a pretty good driver, but it's other people that I worry about. They're either not watching where they're going, they're on their phone, or they're just not giving you enough room on the road, or they're coming into your lane. So a lot of times you just gotta be watching, everything around you. And today was one of those days. So I'm on this road. It's a 3-lane road and traffic moves pretty fast on that road. It says, I think it's a 45-mile zone, but everybody's moving like at least 60 in that little area right there. So I'm out there with my wife and I'm on this road and I'm in the left lane, all the way to the left. And at some point I merged into the middle lane because I knew I was gonna have to make a right in another mile or something like that. So after I merged into the middle lane, out of my peripheral, I can see a white SUV just start to merge into my lane. And there's bumper to bumper traffic right here. There's literally no room for error. When she started to come into my lane, I moved into the left lane as much as I could. But if I would have went any further, I would have ran into the car that was on my left side. So I got as far away from her as I could, but she still rubbed up against me and I didn't even feel it. My wife actually, she was the one that I'm telling you she hit. And I'm like, what do you mean she hit? I didn't feel nothing. She was like, it scraped. So she must have felt it too, because when that happened, she was in the right lane. She made a right turn into a parking lot. So when she made that right turn into the parking lot, I drove up to the next entrance and I pull in. So I pull into this parking lot and me and my wife, we both jump out and I go and look at the front quarter panel and it looks like it's all cosmetic, but she did rub up against it. I was surprised because I didn't feel it. And my wife, she's pissed off because it's her car. I jump out and I go and I look. It's on the front quarter panel. There were scratches. She did rub up against us. So but it was all cosmetic. It was all cosmetic. Literally, I got my finger and I started wiping it off, and all of it was coming off. It was just like she just grazed up against us. It's crazy because, like I said, I didn't even feel it. But anyways, when you get into an accident like this, obviously everybody's pissed off, especially, this was my wife's car. So she was mad. She jumped out and she was like, just hit us. And this lady, the first thing she says is, no, I didn't. You hit me. She was like, I was in the middle lane and you guys merged and you ended up hitting me. And we were like, you're crazy. I was in the middle lane and you came into my lane. So anyways, my wife, she gets on her helmet. Give me your license, your registrations, whoop, whoop, whoop. And she got on her pretty good to the point where this other lady started shaking. She was visibly shaking. So she gets on her phone and she starts calling somebody. And next thing you know, I'm standing right there and I walk over and I look at her car, and same thing. It was cosmetic. There was some scratches. And then I can hear her, she's on the phone with her husband. She's got the phone turned up so loud, or he just talks loud. I could hear him clearly what he was saying. And he's cussing. He was like, hey, call the fucking cops and make sure you get their license and their registration and all that. Tell him. He's like, fuck that, that's bullshit. And it was I think it was a Yukon. It was a brand new Yukon. It was probably like a 2024 sitting on some 26s. It was a nice car. It was a nice ride. So he's yelling. I can hear him yelling, and like I said, she's crying and she's like, oh my God, they jumped out and they're yelling at me and they're accusing me of merging into their lane. And so he tells her, you know what, just call the cops. Just call the cops. He's like, you know what, matter of fact, I'll be there in 5 minutes. Just tell them to wait there. I'll be there in 5 minutes. So she's like, can you wait for my husband? He said he'll be here in 5 minutes. So I'm like, yeah, we'll wait. It's all good. So I got my license out, my registration. I'm ready to exchange information. So, because we wanted to get up out of there. And once we found out it was just cosmetic, it was like, man, no harm, no foul. Let's just call it a day. Nobody got any damage. Let's just get up out of here. But this drama queen, she starts crying and really she's shaking up. And she's like, you guys jumped on me. She's like, you guys jumped out and I'm scared. I even screamed when you ran into me. And she's like, I got 2 babies in the car. Now, it was at that point that I felt bad. I didn't know she had babies in the car. And when she said that, I was like, look, let's just all take a deep breath and just take it down a couple notches. It's not that serious. We're all upset, but it doesn't have to escalate. And the last thing I want is for you to be upset with your babies in the car. She's like, okay, I appreciate that. And I didn't even say nothing to her, but she's like, you guys both jumped out and I don't understand why you came at me like that. And I'm like, look, I apologize to you. I don't know why, where you going with this? I mean, I'm trying to resolve it. Now I'm trying to be cool, but it seems like, you're hung up on that. I understand you were upset, but let's get past that so that, we can go on about our business. So she gets back on the phone and she's got her husband back on there, and I can hear him like, I'll be there in 5 fucking minutes, man. Tell him to wait there and whoop, whoop, whoop. And I'm not even tripping off him. So she's like, he wants to call the cops. He wants to call the cops because it's a collision and we just want to do everything legit. And so I'm like, go ahead, call him. But we're not going to stay here for an hour. This is not going to be an hour ordeal. How far away is he? She's like, he's 5 minutes away and the cops should be here in a couple minutes. So I go back to the car, I grab my phone, and I've learned this before in the past. Always, when you get into an incident like this, always take a picture of both your car and their car, even if they say there's no damage, because that ended up happening to me before, where I literally just bumped into somebody. I took my foot off the brake and I kind of just rolled into their back bumper, but I didn't take a picture. There was no damage. I got out, I looked at it, and I looked at my bumper, and she was like, there's no damage, we're good. So we still exchanged information. She took a picture of my driver's license, and matter of fact, I think she even took pictures of my car, but there was no damage. So I didn't have the sense of mind to take a picture. I just jumped back in my car and I took off. So about a month later, I find out that they filed a claim with their insurance, and they were claiming major damage to the back of their car, and I had nothing to prove it. I had no pictures. Man, I was upset because I knew they were lying and they were just trying to work the insurance to get a new bumper or whatever they were trying to do. I had no way to cover myself. So if you ever get into a fender bender like that and the other person's like, don't trip, we don't need to report this to insurance, and you guys still exchange information, you better get your phone and take a picture, because that is your proof right there. That's gonna cover you. They can't claim, you know, major damage later. That's your proof right there. But anyway, so back to this incident that happened today. So I take pictures of her car and I go back and I take pictures of my wife's car. You know, I remember my wife saying, I hope he doesn't act like an asshole when he gets here. And when she said that, I thought she was talking about the cops because of the way I look and, you know, my background. And I'm like, I'm not tripping. You know, this is a collision. We're not doing nothing wrong. They can do what they want to do. You know, we're legit. Car's insured. I got my license, so I'm not tripping on that. But she was actually talking about this lady's, her husband. And I guess she called it too, because she was like, you know, I could hear him on the phone and he's obviously upset and he's yelling. She was talking about him. And then when she clarified it, she's like, no, I'm talking about her husband. I'm like, man, I don't care about that dude. I'm not even tripping off that. I thought you were talking about the cops. So honestly, about 5 minutes go by, and so another truck comes in. Big ass truck on some big tires. It comes mobbing in all crazy. And this Africano jumps out. Black dude. Jumps out. This fool got cowboy boots on and good sized dude. So he gets out, and as soon as he gets out, he looks over at me. We lock eyes. You know, I'm probably not the most intimidating looking guy, but it was one of those looks like I got the sense that he wasn't in no hurry to come over there and confront me. He stayed over there. He didn't say nothing to me. He didn't look back over at me. He just stood over there. And I say this with all due respect. Looking at that Africano, he wasn't the type of Africano that looked like he had any kind of street in him. He just looked like the type of Africano that didn't have no street in him. He looked like, you know, he was just a working type of dude that probably been around a lot of squares, and that's how he grew up. But no, he pulls up and he just posts up. He posts up right there with her, and I was thinking that's her old man. I don't know why I assumed that, but I just didn't think anybody else was gonna pull up. But I guess my lady kind of figured it out, because later on she told me, no, I knew that wasn't her husband, because when he walked up, there was no embrace. They kind of just stood apart, and he stood there. So I already knew that they weren't together. You know, who he was or what he was doing there, I don't know. So check it out. So a couple minutes later, a cop pulls in, and he seemed like he was cool, because he drives in and he looks over at me and he kind of just nods his head like he didn't have an attitude. So I'm like, cool, you know, at least we don't got to deal with somebody with an attitude. Probably just get up out of here quick. So anyways, as he's parking, another truck comes mobbing in. This truck comes in even crazier, and it pulls in, and this white dude jumps out, flooding like a motherfucker. This dude's pants were probably like 3 inches off the ground. So right when he pulls in, the cop, he's getting out of his car, and he's already walking. He's already like my peripheral. I can see him right there. And almost simultaneously, this white dude jumps out of his truck, and he gets out trying to act all crazy, and he points over at me, and the first thing he does, he looks at his girl and he's like, hey babe, he's like, you okay? And she's like, yeah. So then he looks over at me and he goes, and you're a piece of shit. And when he said that, I said, what you say, motherfucker? I said, man, you better watch your fucking mouth. I said, oh, now you want to be tough, so you're gonna pull up and try to act tough after you call the cop, knowing that, you know, nothing's gonna happen right there. And then my wife, she starts going off. She said, he didn't say nothing to your wife. I'm the one that fucking said it. And as soon as she said that, he's walking over towards his girl, but he's also walking in the direction of my wife. And he responded to her, and that's when it's like all gloves came off. I'm already walking towards him. I'm like, hey, punk ass. And the cop's like, hey man, let me handle. He's like, man, just step back. And I'm like, hey man, you better tell him to get out of my wife's face. And he goes, I got it, man, I got it, don't trip. So he gets in the dude's face and he's like, hey, fucker, shut your fucking mouth. He's like, back up, back your ass up. And he's like, I got kids in the car. He's like, I don't give a fuck, you're about to get into some shit right now. Back your fucking ass up. So this dude's still yapping, and the cop tells him, man, go sit in your fucking car. So he ends up going back to his truck. His boy's standing there, and that's when it dawned on me. So by this time, my adrenaline's starting to go down, and then everything starts to make sense. Okay, so this other dude, that was his boy. He ends up calling this dude at some point. He's probably like, hey man, there's this bald-headed SA over here he's covered with tattoos. I need you to come get my back. And you know, this dude calls the cops, calls his boy. I'm over there by myself with my girl, and he calls all these people, and then he comes out and he tries to act tough. I mean, I don't know, everybody's different. If it would have been, you know, me in that situation, I would have went over there and confronted that individual myself. But nonetheless, he wanted to act like a tough guy. in light of him calling the cops and him calling backup because he didn't have the cojones big enough to come confront me himself. So anyways, cop was cool, man. He's like, you know, what happened? So I ended up telling him, hey, look, this is what happened. She merged into my lane. We rubbed up against each other. It's cosmetic. I understand she got kids in the car. I tried to, you know, diffuse the situation. I tried to calm her down once I found out there was 2 babies in the car. And, you know, obviously nobody wants to see a mother upset when she's got her kids. You know, that's understandable. But at the same time, you seen what happened. This guy comes over here acting like he's in the right, but he's trying to escalate this situation after he calls you. And why did he have his friend come over here? Nobody was threatening his girl. So that just goes to show you that he had intentions on coming over here and seeing this escalate. Cops like, yeah, man. He's like, you know, that's why I told him to go sit in his car. At the end of the day, this is a collision. That's all it is. It's just like there's not even no damage. You know, I'm gonna do a quick report, and this is probably, you guys don't even have to report this to your insurance. This is, there's no damage on neither vehicle, but you know, we don't need this to escalate into something where, you know, it turns into something else, and next thing you know, hooking people up and taking them to jail. And I'm like, nah, man, this wasn't even that serious. I mean, you don't see none of my boys over here posting up. So, you know, at least from this end, this was just gonna be, we were just gonna exchange information and go on about our business. But all the extras, you know, that's something you're gonna have to talk to them about. So anyways, that's what ended up happening in this situation right here. And again, it also reinforced, you know, everything that I said earlier about, you know, thinking about liability, thinking about some of the property. You know, I got a truck, I got a bike. I allow a situation like this to cause me to make a bad decision. If I would have put my hands on that dude, or we would have got into it, or something else would have happened, then, you know, then I put myself in a bad situation where I become liable, or, you know, I can get sued. So, you know, I think I handled this a lot better than I would have years ago. It would have ended a lot different, trust me. Which brings me to the next incident. So the first incident that this story was actually going to be about, it happened in Campbell, California. This was right after I discharged. You know, I moved back to Campbell to reestablish the San Jose regiment. And I'd only been in the San Jose area probably for about 2 months at that time. I didn't know my way around from the west side to the east side to the north side to the south side. I would get lost in Campbell, literally getting off the freeway. I was still learning my way around out there in San Jose. So at that time, I was with my wife, Vicky, and we were over there by, I think it's on the west side off of 280. There's Bascom Avenue over there. So we were going to a Whole Foods market. We lived right there off of Winchester and Hamilton. So I remember getting off the Bird Avenue exit, and I'm not sure what street it was on over there, but it was off of Bascom Avenue somewhere, but it was somewhere in that area by Bascom, Bird Avenue, right off of 280. So I remember pulling onto this street, and I don't remember the details, like this car came up too fast and cut me off, or if he was moving too slow, but at some point tempers flared and I got upset by something that happened. He probably cut me off or something like that. When it happened, back in those days, I keep a machete in my car. I keep it right there by the console. You know, I obviously cannot carry a firearm, and it's a form of protection, and it's something that I've always done. I've always kept a machete right there. So I got it in a little sheath. And back then, I don't know if it was a machete. It might have been like a little small blade, some kind of little knife I had or something, little dagger or something. But I remember I had a weapon right there. And whatever ended up happening, this fool cut me off. Whatever he did, I sped up right next to him and I rolled the window down and I told him, pull over. So when I tell him to pull over, they pull over. You know, like I said, I got Vicky in the car with me, my wife at that time. You know, back in those days, I had gotten into a lot of different conflicts, whether it was over road rage or seeing somebody on the street. There were times where I seen ops out there and I would jump out just doing stupid shit. So because I had been in situations like this before, there were things that obviously that I had learned that, you know, I can't make that same mistake. One of them is this, you know, if I'm with my girl and something happens out there, I'm driving and somebody tells me to pull over, I tell them to pull over, I see somebody or something happens out there, my priority is always going to be to protect her. But I'm not going to do her no good good if I'm in a situation like this and I pull over, I get out the car and I leave her in the car. She's vulnerable. So I had always told her, if we're in a situation like this where something happens and I end up jumping out the car for whatever reason, I start going at it with somebody, instead of just sitting there, get out and get in the driver's seat, because chances are we're probably gonna have to get up out of there fast at some point. And this is just, like I said, through trial and error, it's something that I had learned. So when I pull up next to these cats, at that point, I'm upset. I'm not thinking about nothing but squabbling with these dudes. But I noticed that they're all flamed up. They're North Daniels and we don't know each other. So they didn't know I was an NF member. And at that point, they probably wouldn't have gave a fuck anyway. They probably wouldn't have cared anyway, because they're upset now and they're already in go mode. They're jumping out of their car. So the other thing that I noticed is that there's three of them. And I'm by myself. I'm with my girl. And, you know, I've gotten in situations where I got into it with 2 or 3 cats before. But here's the thing, you know, me jumping out of my car and there's 3 cats, I can't see what all 3 of them are doing at the same time. Not when I'm out there in the middle of the street squabbling with these dudes. My priority at that point is always to protect her, make sure that she's not in a bad situation. And from the minute I get out of that vehicle and leave her sitting there, she's in a bad situation. So when this happened, as soon as I told these cats to pull over, I pulled over right there. They drove up a little ways and pulled over. So they were probably about 100, 200 feet up the street. I don't know. So when I see them pull over and they're jumping out, I grab my banger. So as I'm running towards their car and they're coming at me, another car comes flying up, hits the brakes in the middle of the street, and it's a carload of some more North Daniels. These fools, I want to say they were from West Side Mob. They were from somewhere right there. There's a couple of hoods out there in that area right there. I'm not sure, but you know, from some of the other homies out there in San Jose that I talked to, they seem to have believed that these guys were from West Side Mob. Shout out to West Side Mob. I got nothing against these cats. This was a random situation that took place. Anyways, so when this other carload pulls up, I had to change my plans. You know, now there's anywhere from 6, 7 dudes. I'm by myself. I run over there and I start getting into it with these cats. I'm leaving my girl in the car by herself. These cats could have did anything. They might have done something stupid and hurt her. So when this other carload pulls up and these cats jump out, I turn around and cut tread. I go back to my car, jump back in my car, and I get in, and now these cats are all running towards my car. They got bottles. One of them had something. I don't know what he had, a bar or something. But I never turned the car off. I threw it in drive and I punched it. So these cats are running at me, but they're in the street. So I gun it. And now I'm driving at these cats. So 2 of them were fast enough to get up on the sidewalk and get up out the way. The third one, he tried to get out the way, but I clipped him. So he goes over the corner of the hood and I keep going. So as soon as I start driving up the street and I'm driving past these fools, one of them threw something at my car, a bottle or something. But when it hit the car, I go back into go mode. I hit the brakes, I throw it in park, and I jump back out. And you know, I'm lucky that these youngsters weren't strapped up, that nobody had a gun that day. If they would have had a gun, obviously it would have got ugly. I had just got out. I had just moved out there in that area. I wasn't established yet. But if this same situation would have happened about 2 months later, it would have been a bad situation for them, because by that time, you know, I had found some guns out there on the streets. My regiment was up and running, and I always stayed strapped out there. So now I'm back in the middle of the street, and there's 2 cats that had jumped out of the second car. They ran up and we kind of just stood there for a minute, and they didn't try to advance. I'm the one that had a blade. Neither one of them had anything in their hands. But I look over and I see the rest of them cats. They started circling back and they're running back towards my car. So, I mean, at that point, you know, obviously I'm not going to take on 7 dudes by myself. But I've been in squabbles before where I've gotten packed out. I wasn't worried about that. Again, I started thinking about my girl's safety. I was putting her in a bad situation. So again, that became my priority, and I knew I had to get up out of there. So I jumped back in my car and I took off. They didn't try to come after me. I never ran into any of them cats again. It was just a situation that took place. And even though we really didn't get a chance to get them up, I just clipped that fool and he rolled over my hood. The whole reason I wanted to tell you guys about this story was more for the purpose of, how detrimental road rage can be. Because as I'm sure most of you know, everybody's strapped out there. Most of the youngsters that are out there, they all got straps. In these situations, at least with me, I've learned that I got to use my better judgment. Because I could be out there and something could pop off at any time. Somebody could be riding my bumper, or they start brake checking me, or they cut me off, and I might have intentions on jumping out and getting into it with them in the street just from the shoulders. But not everybody's gonna jump out and fight with you like that. Somebody might jump out, and next thing you know, they got a burner and they'll lay you out. You end up getting domed over a situation that it didn't have to escalate like that. So again, especially for those of you that have things out there. You might have a business, cars, you might own a house, you might have money in the bank, you got assets. You got to think about the choices that you make. You got to use your better judgment. You got to use discretion and not allow yourself to get baited into a situation where you end up putting your hands on somebody and now they're suing you. You lose everything. Then it obviously has a domino effect. You're losing property. You have to liquidate your assets. It also affects your wife as well. So be smarter than I was. I grew up with bad road rage, and still to this day, I still have to catch myself. I try to be considerate when I'm out there. I really do. I might be an aggressive driver, but I try not to cut nobody off. I try not to do things to other people that I wouldn't want people to do to me. Ride anybody's bumper. I give them their space because I'm not trying to get into a confrontation. I'm not trying to fight everybody that I run into out there on the streets. I'm too old for it, and I have too much to lose. So, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you were able to take something away from it. Remember, man, just use your better judgment and don't allow yourself to be baited in. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of War Stories. It's a series that I'm going to try to bring back. I'll hit you guys with one every now and then. I'll bring Inner Demons back. I know some of you guys have been asking about that. And then, of course, the Mexican Mafia story. So I'm going to continue to bring you guys the type of content that you guys like. With that being said, if you guys like this episode, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like this episode, give it a thumbs down. But either way, drop a comment and let me know what you think. As always, I want to thank you guys for your unwavering support, and again for just continuing to be loyal viewers. Make sure you guys tune in to Mile High Hustle's channel. I believe it's on the 8th for round 3 of Fight Night, where myself, Mile High Hustle, and Mikey break down the fight and give you guys all the latest updates. With that being said, this is your boy B, and I'm gone.